So now we have a very, very, very interesting panel. Please get charged up. Trust me, it's going to be a very interesting panel. It will be very engaging. A lot of discussion will be happening in this panel. And you can ask questions because I'm sure in this panel you will have questions. So this time I'm keeping a margin that you can ask questions. The name of the panel is Wealth Planning Panel. High net worth individual families and their wealth planning structures, goals, challenges and solutions. It's a very interesting panel and I'm sure you will be able to relate it to your profession that you do. So we have expert panelists here who have chosen to be here today. Mr. Bhavik Thakkar, CEO, Urbans Investment Managers. Thank you, sir. Mr. Deepak Jain, Founder Director, AFM and Next Gen Estate Planning Solutions Private Limited. Just 2 lines about something. The book, this book says, Practical Guide to Estate Planning, Wills and Estate Planning for Professional Advisors. Please note, American Academy has a sister company with the same directors, Mr. Vyasrai Nagpal and Mr. Deepak Jain. We have formed this company around 6 years back. This is called Next Gen. That means Next Generation Advisory Services. Lot of advisors have reached out to us after completing succession planning certificate from AFM, how to offer succession planning services to their clients. So Next Gen basically helps you. It's a B2B platform. This company is only for the financial advisors. We have around 773 financial advisors in this as members in this company. So basically, the advisors get their client and company as a whole help you to serve this service to their client. So Next Gen Estate Planning Solution, a B2B service provider for succession planning and estate planning. And this is also one of the reference topic that we are going to discuss in this panel.
I am very passionate about estate planning. So to bring the context, this is about HNI thing, but let's just talk about estate planning. So I just want to do a small activity with all of you. I will be asking you some questions. The answer to each question is either a yes or a no. So you will give me a yes by a thumbs up or a no by a thumbs down. Right? So my first question to you is, do you want to retain control over your assets till you are alive? Do you want that your assets remain under your control till you are alive? All of you want to do that? Right. Now my second question is, in case you are incapacitated, disabled, would you still like to take care of yourself and your family, at least financially if not physically? How many of you would like to do that? Great. My third and the most important question in this series of questions is, in case you pass away, would you like that your wealth only goes to people you like it to go, at the time you want it to go, in the manner and mode you want it to go, and in the proportion and amount you want it to go? How many would like to do that? That means you not only like to keep control over your property while you are alive, you want to maintain that control even after you are dead. And my last question in this series of questions is, after you pass away, would you like your property and assets to easily transfer to your next generation without them having to go to court, meet lawyers, visit financial institutions, without there being any ill will between the inheritors? We want to ensure an easy, peaceful transfer of your wealth after you. How many would like to do that? And how many of your clients would have answered these questions in yes? So if the answers to this question is yes, then my friends, you need to learn estate planning. Because estate planning is the only way to ensure that you retain control over your property while you are alive. It's the only way to ensure that even if you are incapacitated, you are able to take care of yourself and your family financially. And it's the only way to ensure that your property is distributed as per your wishes and what you want. And the last thing is, it's the only way to ensure that your property is easily and peacefully transferred to the next generation. So we'll be talking about wealth management issues of HNI, but we will be also focusing on estate planning, which is very, very important that you help your clients do that.
They are here to share their wisdom on much needed topic. Warm welcome to all the panelists.
Okay, so let us start the panel. And the topic is high net worth families and their wealth planning structures, goal, challenges, and solutions. So I'll ask you from a very basic question to each of the panelists, and that is, how do you define a ultra HNI or high net worth individual? And what changes from a person being a regular customer to being a HNI or a ultra HNI? What changes in that person's requirement, his way of communicating, the service standards he requires? What changes actually?
I think it's a good question from what defines the HNI or what defines the requirement that suddenly you see that the client is an HNI and not a retail client to be that's the from I think the level of complexity of the solution that you have to create for that particular client defines that he is an HNI. I think I don't want to put a number to it because this is the volume, and I think level of work that you have to do towards managing the wealth for that particular client defines that he is an HNI or a normal retail client. I would also put it that if it's an HNI client and putting in FDs happily and he doesn't need complexity, you may not want to, he's still an HNI, but the relationship is not complex. He doesn't need an advisor in such a situation. And hence, in spite of being an HNI, the level of complexity is pretty low. And hence, he doesn't need an advisor in that sense.
Okay. Anybody would like to add?
Yeah. So maybe there could be some definitions which is accepted by the industry. Need-based definition is obviously there, but if you look at say Singapore, for example, which has accredited investors. I mean, one way to define what is called as an HNI, right? Similarly, say wealth management entities typically look at say $1 million and above, right? So if you have about 8 to 10 crore worth of liquid surplus, like liquid investments, then that falls under the HNI category. And obviously because of their needs have also evolved over a period of time in terms of the protection to the enhancement of wealth and so on and so forth. Yeah, so that's the landscape.
Okay. So, yeah.
So I look at a different perspective. Normally when we talk HNI, we look from the wealth side, wealth creation or wealth generation side. But there's other dimension to it, like you made a mention in the beginning. These HNIs also need, more importantly, the wealth protection strategies or advice. So very few are there for them to give this advice on wealth protection. So this is one of the complex situations where HNIs look forward for a quality advice.
So I will add a couple of things. See, HNIs, or when we say slightly ultra high HNIs, they have far more access to information and advice compared to a normal person. Now, for example, a normal investor would have access to maybe what is there in the public domain and also maybe a couple of advisors telling him what to do. But the HNI has got, the bank is telling him what to do. There are people who are showing him products from the wealth side. There are people who are individual distributors. He has access to AIF, he has access to PMS. Perhaps he has some money lying outside India also, so he requires multi-country exposure. So the complexity is very far more, and the expectations are far more. See, the more money a person makes, or maybe the other way around, the more money a person makes, the more greedy he is. Or maybe because he's more greedy, he makes more money. Whatever it is, the point is the HNIs are far more greedy than normal people. So that could be a good definition, that are more people servicing the person, and is he extremely greedy? So, he will talk about all these things, okay, equity fund, AIF, PMS, and then he'll say, do I get a return of 15 to 20%? That creates a HNI. He feels or she feels that 20% return is entitled to him. It's a birthright. That is an HNI.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just to, I think, I absolutely agree. And just to add some more data points, for example, if you look at, say, portfolio management service, the overall AUM, if you go by the SEBI data, roughly 2,40,000 crore worth of AUM is being managed under the portfolio management service, and this I'm talking about the listed equity space. You know, sometimes you will also hear about some 11, 12 lakh crore, being managed, or about 20 lakh crore being managed, but that is inclusive of some of the, the debt fund money that is being managed for the PF. But if you look at this 2,40,000 crore rupee being managed under the PMS accounts, it is across 1,40,000 investors. I mean, this is as per the SEBI data, right? So if you were to divide this and look at the average ticket size is about 1.8 crore, right? Now there was an argument, a few years back, that because mutual fund commissions were, sort of, discontinued on an upfront basis, is when the PMS AUM zoomed up, right? But if that was the case, then the average should have been close to 50 lakhs, right? Because that is the minimum ticket size, right? So what this data point suggests is that, the HNIs have a far more need, and that is why, the average AUM at a PMS level is 1.8 crore and, not lesser.
Great, great. So my next question is to Mr. Hitesh. Yeah. How do you go about creating portfolio solutions for HNIs?
So, we represent Trust Plutus, and the way we started the firm basically 12 years back, and the core philosophy was to keep client in the center and basically create solutions around it. And it has to be completely non-conflicting, keeping in mind that's how we landed having an RIA license very early in our journey of the wealth management. We also tied up with a risk profiling company, which is world's best risk profiling company called Finametrica, now bought over by Morningstar, which kind of helps us in assessing clients' profiles. Basically, what I personally believe is that most of the mistakes are made in portfolio management if you don't allocate your assets correctly. I think that's the core of the wealth advisory. And we went in deep and basically ensured that when you're creating a portfolio, that itself you're understanding the client in so deep and creating a list of all his assets in detail, which I think you would also want to touch upon, that basically it helps us in lot of times clients invests in some of the assets and he himself forgets. And that's, if you don't mention it and create a list out of it, and then suddenly you realize you've done an insurance policy or you ended up, I think I would advise anyone and everyone in this room to go and create a list for all your clients with mentioning each and every asset class in detail, which could be as simple as mutual funds, or PMSs, all financial assets, all physical assets, now digital assets as well. It kind of, you yourself will be surprised to realize that the client is much more wealthier than we generally think. And that's how it became a starting point for us to advise, to make it as a starting point to advise. And then create an asset allocation based on the profile that we get out of the risk profile. So that's and then it's a journey. I think it takes time for client and us to come to a common ground to create a portfolio.
Great. Sanjeev, I just wanted to ask, put it differently, how do you build a portfolio for a client who thinks he's entitled to 20% plus?
So you create more complexity so that nobody really realizes that ki 20% return आया कि नहीं आया.
तो जीत नहीं सकते तो कंफ्यूज कर दो.
हाँ, because देखिए आप while I am in a we are all advisory, we are all handling clients. Abhi now we said, I think Hitesh said something that mutual funds are very simple products, right? We still don't know what they do. किसी को पता नहीं, सबको लगता है वो पैसा डाल दिया फिर कुछ रिटर्न आ गया. क्या होता है उसके अंदर हम लोग को अभी भी नहीं पता ठीक से. पर वो सिंपल हो गया है. अब क्या हो गया, हम लोग PMS की बात कर रहे हैं. वहाँ क्या होता है वो किसी को नहीं पता. उसके बाद AIF आ गया. फिर किसी ने बोला क्रेडिट ऑल्टरनेटिव्स. हम बोलो क्रेडिट ही नहीं पता है. व्हाट इज क्रेडिट ऑल्टरनेटिव? Aren't things becoming more complicated, difficult to assess, difficult to communicate? What is this? What are we saying? We are saying this is a promise. we are somebody who's an expert, and the whole banking sector, which is well regulated and has been running for, I don't know, maybe 100 plus years in India, is actually goofing it up. There are NPA crises every 5 years. Okay? But somehow, and they have access to the client, they have access to their assets, they have access to the cash flows, they have access to information. Somehow, I am sitting in my office in Hyderabad, Bangalore, Gurgaon, Noida, somewhere. I have better information than banks, the promoter, about the business, and I can generate returns for you. I don't know, 18, 20%. And that's how the HNI comes in. So you are right, you cannot actually make a satisfying portfolio. And I think if you have access to any ultra HNIs, most of the people complain that while they invested with a certain outlook and they were not promised but they were indicated of a higher return, due to various reasons. So another very important aspect which you said, how do you build a portfolio? You should be extremely good at giving excuses. In USA, this happened. There's a bank called SVB which failed. In Russia, there was a Ukraine war. So all those things combined will ensure that something is promised, but something is never delivered. And after that, like a Hiran there was in Ramayana, the HNI is running after him, but will never catch him.
Such a great advice. Suresh, I want to ask you a question. You deal with clients who have estate planning needs.
Yes.
So what estate planning needs are different in a HNI than maybe a retail customer?
Difficulties as a planner is right, like you said rightly, first to make them the list of all the assets they own, which take months together. And they deal with the different people normally, and they don't have data in one place. That's the biggest challenge we get. It may happen with anyone, but it's more so with HNIs. So once we have a data in place, the next biggest challenge is for them primarily deciding how to distribute their assets. So most of the times I come across these wealth or assets are created without any specific objective. So when the time comes for the succession or distribution of the assets, so they scratch their heads, what do I do with this? To whom I need to give? And there are cases where I have come across children don't want any of these assets. They say, don't give me anything, you do whatever you want. And another difficulty for them is most of them are heavy in real estate. And when the children are abroad, they are least bothered about these properties. And yeah, sometimes because of HNI, like you rightly said, there is a greed. We advise them to exit real estate, but no. Very close to them. So I say you exit real estate, convert into financial assets, easy to distribute your children, make them asset in their own countries, they don't listen.
And what are the regulatory constraints on moving assets from India to a foreign country?
If it is a financial assets under LRS scheme, relatively it's very easy. If it's a real estate, yes, there are certain restrictions even to repatriate under LRS. Especially when the assets are inherited, yes, there are certain restrictions.
Right. So that's a challenge.
That's a challenge.
And another challenge is the taxation of those assets to children who are living abroad.
In the countries where they are, because they are tax residents there.
Right. Okay, great. Anything you'd like to add, sir?
I think being in Bangalore, every other family has either worked in US at some point in time, or either the father holds a US passport, or a son holds a US passport, and suddenly you realize that the family, while you are creating tax solutions, it's much more complex than you think. And even while creating portfolios, you have to kind of exclude those out of the financial holdings, and rest of the Indian residents are holding the portfolios. But ultimately, the inheritance is to be done by these children who are holding US passports. So, wherein I think solutions like creating trusts and all have helped in doing this for our clients, and incrementally also I think the need for this is only increasing. Lot of clients some of the HNIs are also contemplating, the Indian tax is also pretty high. It's not so, in comparison to US, it's as good as similar. So some of them are also contemplating to give away their Indian residency because of the similar scenario that they can move to basically get out of the tax residency and become an NRI in that case and not liable for the Indian taxation then. So that's about.
So tax is complicated.
Yes.
Moving money out is complicated for these HNI.
That's true.
And maybe what they want to do with this money which they have in India, they have not decided.
Right.
So that increases the complexity.
Right.
Bhavi, can you throw some light on offshore investment products?
Yeah, so sure. So, incrementally the HNIs have, started exploring investments abroad also, because either in the listed equity space or in the other solutions which are, say, otherwise not possible in India. So we run a fund in Mauritius, which is a global arbitrage fund, commodities and currencies arbitrage, right? And we have seen incrementally that the HNIs in India have also, participated through the LRS, right? I mean, one important change that has happened in this budget, is that the 250,000 limit is there. Whenever you used to invest, there was a tax collection at source of 5%, which this budget has changed it to 20%, right? So if you remit, say, $100,000 abroad, about 82 lakh rupees you transfer abroad, you will have to have immediate impact of about another 16 lakhs, which is what gets collected by the bank at source. And of course, you can reclaim it in terms of when you file your income tax returns, but that's one of the, that becomes one of the challenge, right? I mean, for somebody to, as such, the limit for an HNI, $250,000 is not very large, right? I mean, per financial year. And they have a need to invest abroad, right? So this is one of the challenges that we may face going forward, because this is getting applicable from July onwards. So from till now, at least 3 months, the window is there in terms of people to still invest abroad. I think we've also seen that, large participation into mutual funds, which have come out with the, offshore schemes, right? The fund of fund in India, which have been investing in global markets. And what we've been often hearing is that, once the limit opens up, because RBI has also kept, I think, $7 billion worth of limits, right? So the moment an AMC opens up the subscription, I think it gets filled and, they have to shut for further subscription. So that itself shows that, they've been investing abroad, and there is an appetite, because what they've been in India, if the wealth is increasing, so is their need, right? And a lot of people are also planning that if they want to set up, their family offices abroad, if they want to send their kids abroad for education, if they want to buy properties abroad. And given that this $250,000 is a limit, right? I mean, say if you want to buy $1 million worth of property abroad, you will have to accumulate it either through multiple family members in a financial year, or you do it across the years, right? So park money abroad and then over a period of time, utilize it for whatever you want to do, right? And also, some kind of, like, the startup ecosystem has been working in India as well, but there are many other opportunities which is there in outside world, where people would want to, let's say, for example, few things which have become very successful here, but say somewhere in Africa, it has not yet started, or it is just at an initial stage. And that this thing has worked very well in India, but it has not, it is at a very nascent stage in different market. So would I want to participate, the same story in a different market, right? So these are some of the things that we have seen that, people have taken a lot of interest in investing abroad.
Sandeep, I just wanted to ask a question to you about how should wealth managers approach HNIs and service them so that they are able to satisfy their need for customized advice? Because the higher you go in the ladder, you want more customized advice, less run-of-the-mill advice.
So here, I will say that there could be two approaches, and most likely the higher you go, the person who's looking at you for advice is looking a product-based advice. they feel that they have people working with them or they have other advisors working with them who are planning their assets and putting them into neat buckets of liquidity, returns and safety. So they would want to see products which are, they might be complex, but at least on the face of it, they show that they have access to it and they will be able to generate better. So it becomes a little more product based. Because see, today if you go to a really rich person, you cannot tell him what is the best advice. You can only show him things. And you can, perhaps if you have a good understanding of what his overall thinking is, then you can say how this fits into his profile, how it enhances his portfolio of a certain risky asset, where he's willing to take risk, and how this perhaps addresses the need of risk mitigation on one aspect and takes risk on another aspect. So then if you give him a different flavor, then perhaps he'll be more open to look at it rather than perhaps trying to tell him what is, how his overall portfolio can do well. Because he will not be very receptive to your ideas. However, he'll be very receptive to ideas which fit into his bigger picture. So if you, आपको समझ में आ गया है कि बड़ी पिक्चर क्या है, वो क्या सोचता है. अब किसी को रियल एस्टेट इन्वेस्टमेंट में पसंद हो सकता है, किसी को समझ में आता है कि नहीं मैं इक्विटी में फ्यूचर्स ऑप्शंस में कर सकता हूँ. तो उनको जो बात समझ में आती है, आप उसमें अगर थोड़ा एनहांसमेंट कर दें, उसमें एक स्ट्रक्चर ला दें, दे विल अप्रिशिएट दैट. बट अगर आप बोलें कि पूरा पोर्टफोलियो में आप ऐसा करें तो फिर वो शायद दे विल नॉट बी वेरी रिसेप्टिव टू दैट. दे माइट लिसन टू यू, but they might not implement it. तो उससे कोई फिर, it just becomes a waste of time for you also.
Right. Hitesh, what are the situations under which trusts are advised to HNI clients?
So as I was mentioning, one was this particular case where a lot of US-oriented passport holding has been there in a lot of families, which is leading to genuine requirement for creating trusts. There are cases where there's a special child in the family and you need to ensure that the needs of the special child are taken care of at all point of time. Even in situations where there are cases where, for example, there's been a second marriage and there are children from the first marriage where you have to create the trusts to ensure that the children from the, even father wants to ensure that his children from the first marriage are taken care of and their needs are taken care of. There's a large client, real estate developer whose children are in US, not at all interested, as he was mentioning, in India, has a big empire, a lot of businesses into various industries. Ultimately, he has to create trusts to ensure that and he is getting old every day, right? So he needs to ensure that the wealth is transferred to them at the right time in whichever form that his children feel appropriate. And since the size is big and he's in India and children doesn't want to come back to India, they are married, settled. So there are various situations where you come across. And in such a scenario, in this situation, you can, we get to know when you start interacting in deeper level with clients over a period of time. Maybe in the first couple of meetings, he may not be open to share everything, but over a period of time is where you realize that there's a genuine need for the trust required.
Right. Suresh, why do we need a trust? Why not a will to do all of this?
So why do we trust? Why not a will? Yes. I always say that estate planning doesn't start or end with a will. It is much more than that. I'll take an example which I did with my client itself, so that easy to understand. I had to meet a client who is a very senior executive in a multinational company, travels almost 2 to 3 weeks a month abroad, wife and 2 children, son and daughter, 11 years and 8 years, when I met him 3 years back. So he's aware about estate planning because he keeps traveling, so to that extent my difficulty is taken off. A question came that he want to make a will. So when I met him, discussed all the aspects, his assets is close to worth 30 crores. Out of that, around 18 crores is in real estate in different places, especially southern India. He's basically from Andhra Pradesh. So I asked him, what is the purpose, why you want to make a will? So something happens to me so that my assets will pass on to my wife, she will take care of the children. So I have to dig little more about the wife's capabilities. She is a homemaker, a graduate from a Tier 3 town in Andhra Pradesh, with all the good respect to everyone. She is not so well versed with the outside world. She is a very good homemaker, like typical Indian housewife. So I said, are you confident that your wife will be able to manage these assets? He was taken aback. He did not think about it. So if you make a will, your 30 crores may become 3 crores or 3 lakhs in the next 3 years. She will be flooded with unwanted advice with many people. And she is emotionally not in a good mood. And she succumbs to the advice by the near and dear one. And they give advice which is in their best interest or which is good for them. So it is not the right way to create a will, to make a will. Create a trust. Or make a provision to create a trust in the will, testamentary trust. So this is one example I can take where will is not the useful tool, trust is the right option. I hope I answered.
Anything anybody would like to add? So the way I think why trust should be given preference over will in certain situation is that when you talk about property, property has two parts. One is control of property, the second is title of property. If I ask you to choose one out of two, control without title or title without control, what would you choose? What would you give preference to? Control over title or title over control? So you have the property in your name, you are not controlling it. Is it better or controlling a property without having title is better? Control is better. And trusts allow you to control property without having title. Because title is risky. Moment you put things in your name, your risk passes to the property. When you separate control and title, which you do it very well with a trust, you are able to insulate your assets against so many problems which come to you. And this is the biggest reason why trusts are becoming popular. Control and everything is there. But this separation of control and title is what makes trust a better structure than a will. Right? So with this, we will end the session. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Panelists have to be seated for the memento. I would like to thank all the panelists for such wonderful discussion on estate planning. And in the beginning also I said that COVID has taught us many things, and that makes it even more imperative for us to discuss this with our clients. We don't do it because maybe we don't know about it or we get scared how to open up the conversation. But we at American Academy strongly advocates estate planning. In fact, this is the only academy in India which brought the concept of estate planning in India. So a big thanks and a big round of applause to American Academy for this concept. I would like to share one very important data which I just went to the exhibition center and I checked at all the stalls, the exhibitors basically. I got to know they are receiving fantastic response. Thank you to all the attendees who are here and is making the occasion really successful and making a history. Thank you so much. I mean, I knew, you will be surprised to know, to panelists also, I knew this event is going to motivate people to upskill, but I never knew it would be so quick. We have got around 16 on-the-spot registrations for our program. This is highest ever in any city in India. So thanks to all of you for people who have taken on-the-spot admission. And I cannot forget, although I will, but I only have to do with estate planning.